אז שלום לכולם. They say in Hebrew, אחרונה חביבה. So it worked out good for us. I've been working in Lev Ladat for, I think, 6 or 7 years. I teach, besides that, I teach Tanakh at Matan in the Eshkolot program, if you've heard about it, for teachers that come from the States for a year. I'm running a summer Beit Midrash, maybe Reuven mentioned it before, in Kfar Etzion for the community there. And my love is, I really love learning and teaching Tanakh. I'm trying to finish my doctorate for many years, and zeu, we'll start. It's very challenging to teach the whole Torah on one foot, like we say, al regel achat. I hope we'll manage. I often want to talk about Lev Ladat, but I really want us to do Lev Ladat, because in a chapter of Nechama Leibovitch in the book Lilmod Ulelamed that hasn't been translated yet to English, even though that is a book that's called To Teach and to Be taught by, I met him at lunch, Rabbi Shmuel Pereles. I took it out of the library here thinking it was the translation of Nechama's book, but it's a book about Nechama's teaching, the book he wrote. But Nechama writes, and this is 40 years ago, she's writing that people nowadays talk about that we have to have a new pedagogia, and that out of the 48 ways that the Mishnah in Masechet Avot mention how we should learn, we most apply only one of them. We apply mostly just to listen. We don't use the other 47 ways usually in our classes. And in her article, she's talking about the change we have to do in classes to have the teacher talk less, what we call today kita fucha, the upside down flip classroom. But she really was ahead of her time. And when I prepared my class, and I'm saying I'm in Lev Ladat, and we're trying to find new challenges and how to approach different problems. And here in the Nechama Leibovitch, I had the zchut to be your student when I was in 12th grade. Like we say in Hebrew, barachti bebet sefer, I ran away from school. I went every day from 8 to 10 to her house. She gave a class in her house for one of Matan's earlier women's group. And after 2 weeks, Nechama told me, Chaviva, את לא תלמידה בבית ספר, you're not a student in school. And I went to Chorev, which is a very square school. She didn't let me continue learning, coming to her class and missing school. But I think a lot of what I love in Tanakh and know Tanakh is not only from those 2 weeks, but from a lot of things that Nechama taught. And she was the best, I think, model of not being just a lecture. You couldn't sit in a class without being involved. She would go around, ask a question, have everybody write something down. You had to come up to her. You couldn't just sit down and look at your phone to see if you got any messages. But you couldn't do it. And what we're trying to do now is things that she talked about really many years ago. And in Lev Ladat, we're trying. Yuval before told us the problems that we have in the education system. And Lev Ladat started after there was a big, was called Va'adat Torat Chaim, where they sat down, different mechanchim sat together and were trying to think, how could we cope with the problem? The religious students finished 12 years of learning. They learned Tanakh, they learned Gemara. And when you ask them, when you interview them, what do you think? What hashpa'ah? What impression did it have on your life? What do you think of learning Tanakh? The answers are very, very negative. We hate Tanakh. We don't want to learn Gemara. Things that were very it's very troublesome for mechanchim to hear that after they spend 12 years of so many hours. You heard how many hours we learned it in the religious system, and then started what was called Torat Chaim, and from there started Lev Ladat, which said we have to try and cope with this problem and try to find ways that learning, it started from Tanakh and Torah Sheba'al Peh, but we deal with all the subjects today. In our site we have history, and we have Sifrut, and we have English. We have different English. It's new, but we deal with different subjects, not only Tanakh, but it started. The crux of the problem is, how do we make Tanakh meaningful? How do we make it something that kids will relate to and will feel that the messages really can inspire their life? And that's where we started with Lev Ladat. And today on our website, which is currently only in Hebrew, we have a few lesson plans in English, but if you can read in Hebrew, you can have a lot of use of it. In the site, there's Chomrei Hora'ah, okay, like you saw before in the site of the Chinuch Klali. It goes by Yesodi, Tichon, Ganei Yeladim. You can choose the subject you're looking for if you're teaching Tanakh, okay. And here it doesn't have on all the prakim, because it's something that we're working on with the Tzevet Kotvim. Teachers are writing lesson plans. Here you can get different lesson plans. Okay, tell you the plan, what you should start. You should use drama, writing, a discussion, and hafnama. I'll soon get to it. So you can look at lesson plans in the site. There are a lot of articles, educational articles. There are a few lesson plans you can see in English, really just 3 or 4 of them. There's a very important feature here that's called Etzah Tova. If you want to, after this class, and I'll give you the structure of a class of Lev Ladat, and you decide, I want to implement it in my class, but I don't know, how should I start teaching Sefer Yehoshua? You can write to the site and say, I'm looking for how to teach so-and-so. I have a problem in teaching this. I want to give, what kind of interesting project could I give on a certain subject? You write here at Etzah Tova, and you can also look, and you get an answer back. It takes a few days. And you can also read through other etzot that were given to other teachers and learn from other questions that were asked. We have movies, a lot of movies that are divided into different topics, short movies that you can use in your classroom. Some of them are English with Hebrew subtitles. Some of them are in Hebrew, and a lot of them have attached to them a plan how to use it in your lesson. What to ask before you bring the movie, what to ask during the movie or after the movie. That's something we have here. We have ishtalmuyot. One of the things we do is training teachers and teachers development program. In Israel, teachers have to go to programs to ishtalmuyot. It's not voluntary. In order for them to get a raise in salary, you have to do so-and-so hours of learning. So teachers have to do ishtalmuyot. We give ishtalmuyot also in schools. I've given in many schools. Teachers finish on Tuesday, let's say at 1 o'clock. They still stay till 4, and we study together. And my job in Lev Ladat, I run the online ishtalmuyot, which teachers sit at home, read our text, see the movies we have, and communicate with their mentor. And these ishtalmuyot are very successful. We have approximately 500 teachers every year that go through our ishtalmuyot, and we're developing new ones. We hope one day to translate them to English. My students in the Eshkolot are waiting for it because they said that they really, something like that can really be helpful abroad. And what do we do in Lev Ladat? Okay, after we saw the site, I can talk more, but I have only 40 minutes and short of time.
So we got a free or tashlum?
Tashlum miz'ari. It's part of Michlelet Herzog. Michlelet Herzog charges 30 shekel to sign up for our Hishtalmuyot. Okay, that's $5, $6, whatever. Okay, that's what I'm saying. It's almost nothing. It's just for, it's called the Dmei Retzinut. Yeah, just for registration. We don't charge. And you can take a look. If anybody wants to hear more about it, you can come to me afterwards. What I want to do now is go into a class, for example. I chose, just one second, okay. I chose to show you the mivne, the structure, thank you. My parents were supposed to be here and I see that they're not here yet. And they were supposed to be helping me with my English. I was born in New York, but my parents made Aliyah when I was 6 weeks old. I spent 2 years with my husband on Shlichut in Torah Mitzion in Potomac, Maryland. So there I got a little improvement in my English, but we've been back for 10 years already. So I have to get back to English. So in a class of Lev Ladat, the structure that was planned, it's important to have 3 parts. The first part we call keshev, okay, that's paying attention, if we would. The second part is interaction, and the third part is internalization. And what do I mean in that? That our first, when we come into a class, we have one mission of getting the kids' attention. I call that the sur mira, like the attention that we have to get them, clear the table, get ready, be quiet, put the phones in the closet, okay, get ready for class. They have to, so that's a low, like a first level of paying attention. But paying attention, I mean, it's attention to the subject, to the heart of the class I want to teach. And we see it as something very important in the process of having what we're teaching relevant to the student. And we choose what to put in the keshev, what after we plan the class, after we find, that's what the process I want to do with you, after we find and figure out what's the heart of the perek, what's the heart of my class. After we'll figure that out, we can go and see what kind of opening, what kind of paying attention should we implement for this class. And then comes the main part of the class, which is mifgash, which is interaction. Interaction when the student interacts with the text, with the teacher, between students, okay, with the knowledge. And part of the process, and here comes different techniques we can use, and we implement different techniques of meeting the text, different levels of the text, different stages of understanding the text. And then, okay, the last stage is internalization. It doesn't happen all the time, okay? We hope, we always have a hope that something will go home with the kids, that something will talk to them and will feel that it's relevant to their life, and it will be a message that they'll try and implement. But it's not something that we can always say, we finish our class and we can check that we did the first part, we can check that we did enough in the second part. We can only pray that the things that we think are important will be internalized, and there are some techniques we've developed in Lev Ladat for ways that can encourage implementation. And part of the process of implementing and internalizing has to do with the process of what we're doing in teaching. We start with learning. The teacher has to learn for himself what is the subject matter. Then we have to think of how we will teach it. And we have to think of how are we going to evaluate what we're teaching. And this whole process, we see, is a process that has to be engaged with the question of how do we want the whole process to be relevant to the students in the different stages of this cycle, of the teaching cycle. For example, when Lev Ladat started, it was started Moshe Weinstock, which is he's now finishing his job in Misrad HaChinuch. When he started Lev Ladat, he said, until they won't change the Bchinot Bagrut, the regions, everything we're doing in Lev Ladat won't work. Because the teacher teaches and students learn for what has to be in the exam. So if in the exam, if you teach in a very meaningful way, but what they have to know in the exam is what's the difference between what Rashi says and what Ramban says, or what Rambam says and what Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says, but so the teachers won't teach in this way because they'll fear that they're wasting time, and students won't want to learn this way. So that's why what Lev Ladat succeeded in doing, that in the Bchinot Bagrut in Israel, there are a few questions that are called She'elot Lev Ladat. The question, Lev Ladat questions. I'll be very frank with you. My kids hate those questions. Okay? She'elot Lev Ladat, because they say they're very chofrot, they're very digging, like they say. I don't know if you say deep, yeah. What do you think? Annoying, yeah, maybe. But but they now have these questions in the Bagrut. So, and what Moshe succeeded doing, Weinstock, when he entered Misrad HaChinuch, was he took this idea from Lev Ladat that's in the religious community of Misrad HaChinuch, and he implemented into the secular education system. There it's called She'elot Omer. Okay, Arachim, Midot. I don't remember what the Reish stands for. So once you've changed what you want, I'll give you just an example.
Optional questions or
no, Chovah. The Chovah. That's it. That's what he said. Until it's not going to be Chovah, so teachers won't do it, and students won't volunteer to do it. So, like for an example of a question that was in a Bagrut, if in Machshevet Israel you had to learn about Rambam and about Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, the question that was in the new Bagrut said a friend of yours is going through a crisis of believing in God because of, I don't know, somebody is sick in her family, whatever. Write an answer, write her a letter using 3 of the sources that we've learned in the subject of coping with Isurim. Use 3 of that to inspire your writing a letter of chizuk.
So when did they change this?
It started a few years ago, like 5-6 years ago.
So this all came from the English, because it started with the higher order thinking skills in English, and that was where it all started.
But it's not talking about high. It's not only talking about.
But that's where it started, and that was because the English is always the guinea pig for these things. And it started with the English, and then they moved it. I remember this. They moved it to Tanakh, and now they're moving it into other
Okay,
areas.
you mean in teaching English?
In teaching English.
It's a second
and in
language.
Bagrut,
Can.
And now and then.
Okay, when I give ishtalmuyot in classrooms, in the Chadrei Morim, in teachers' room, usually the English teachers are the first one to jump in and do things, because that's how they teach. Made them, okay, but they're already into the.
But
already.
that's exactly what happened. Those were the mimaniyot. They started with us with Hatz, and then it moved to the other mitzvot.
But here, I just want to make it clear, it's not only talking about miumaniyot of thinking. It's not talking about higher level thinking.
Well,
But it's talking about using it in values, things that are relevant to your life. How does the psukim you've learned relevant to a crisis that's been going on in class? We've now put out a choveret that's called She'elot Omer that gives teachers ways how to teach correctly for these questions. Because teachers said, how do we know how to teach? How can we teach? We haven't been teaching this way. So now that's part of the process of training. So that's, I gave you a quick overview. And what I want to do now in a short time is to do a mini class on Hagai. Hagai is one of my favorite prophets. And Bichlal, whenever somebody asks me if you want to give a course on something, one of my loved Sfarim is the books of Bait Sheni. First of all, when I came to a Michlala, I teach also in Ohalo in Katzerin, teacher training. And when I have to give a course and I'm thinking of something that everybody, Datiim and Chilonim don't know, talk Bait Sheni. Nobody knows. Not Ezra, Hagai. Now it's improving a little because Miri Schliessel in the new curriculum for Tanakh put in parts of Ezra, Nehemiah, and part of the Nevi'im. So I hope the students in 10 years will know something. So what I want to do, I gave you a blank piece of paper. I want to start with you're answering these two questions. When lately did you hold back from starting doing something new because you thought you won't succeed in the fullest degree? That's right on one side of your blank paper. Try to think of an example. It's on the board in Hebrew and in English, okay? That's on one side. And on the other side is when lately did you start something even though you knew you won't reach the goal in a perfect manner? כן, זו שאלה חופרת, that's an example. Okay, it's for your personal use, okay? You don't have to share it with everybody, so feel free to give your own example. And check and give you a V or a... You should know, Nechama, when I was in my national service in Tzfat, I wrote to Nechama, I sent her Gilionot, and she would send back with her. It was amazing. Like, I hate marking papers, and she did it voluntarily. She would write me, I would get tons of Herot, like more than half of what I wrote, it's amazing. But no, I'm not going to be Nechama now, don't worry. So you can write whatever you want. If somebody wants to give an example, I would appreciate it, but only if somebody really has something that wants to share with us.
I'll do the second.
Okay, fine. So let's start from the second.
All right. My husband and I just went to, it was our first trip to Europe. We went to Italy. And we planned it on our own, by ourselves. And we didn't, we just went on the internet and we, picked different places and, planned whatever, tours we were going to do. And we didn't know if it was going to work out perfectly or not, but we did it anyway. And we said, however it turns out, that's how it's going to be. And this is the first time, and it's going to be fun, and we're going to have a great time. And it was.
Okay, it's good. It ended that way. Somebody wants to share the first answer for the first question? Okay.
I had a good startup idea that I didn't think I'd be able to get done properly within the time frame needed, so didn't do it.
So you gave up. Okay. Yeah, one last one.
Go on. PhD, I'm sharing. Going for a PhD, too scared, never did it, won't do it, and training for a marathon. Scared on it.
Wow, okay, thank you. Okay, we don't have a lot of time, but I want to go on to a saying. I don't know if I translated by myself, so I'm not sure it's correct. In Hebrew you say, האויב של הטוב מאוד הוא המושלם. Okay, so in English I wrote, the enemy of good is excellent.
Or perfection.
Okay. Okay, this is what happens when I didn't say it by my parents. Okay. When you see this saying, when you hear this saying, what do you think of? If you can give me an example, something that comes up to your mind. Yeah.
I'm involved with somebody who's trying to put out some educational materials. And they're not putting them out, even though they have a lot of wonderful Homer, but it's not exactly like maybe that school wants us to have the recordings in Havarat Himanit, so I'm not going to put it out in Havarat Shkanit, Havarat Faradit, and whatever, because I still have to find something to put in Himanit. And it's frustrating to educators who are waiting for material, and it's frustrating to people who fund them. So it's
Okay, one more example. Yeah.
I'm a publisher, and committing your words to the written page is often very difficult for authors and other. And sometimes you can coach an author through it, and other times, like now, I'm sitting with a teeny tiny kosher book. It's teeny tiny, and a year later, we haven't gone to print because just one more thing, I'm not comfortable with this article, and then you never get it done. And you have sponsors and others.
Okay. Now, if I would know you for a longer time, if we would have time, I would draw a line on the floor and have you stand on the line on where you feel you are connecting with this saying. Okay. If it's something that you agree with, it's part of you. It's something you're at the other end, but we don't have time, and I'll just skip to the next thing. When we're going into now talking about Beit Sheni, on the way here I saw that Atar Tanakh had a very nice publication of Michurban Letkuma with the dates. So if you do want to teach Beit Sheni, it's a good idea to get their timeline of Churban and Tkuma. I think you got Esther. I peeked to see what present you got. I think you got Esther. But you can look in it. If we're talking about Beit Sheni, I'll just give like a starting point. Year 539, Koresh gives, we call it the Declaration of Koresh. And here he allows the Jews to go back to their homeland. And not only the Jews. What I brought here, if you'll see, until they found this important Galil Koresh, until they found this, there was a lot of debate if Hatzarat Koresh that's written in Tanakh, also in the book of Ezra, and also in the book of Divrei Hayamim, it's the end of Divrei Hayamim, and the beginning of Sefer Ezra. There was a lot of debate if Jews made it up, because we didn't find any mismachim, any proofs, documents in the Persian emperor that prove that such a Hatzara was given, besides what we have in Tanakh. When they found this Galil Koresh, which is something very small, but it's written to Elam, to different nations, where Koresh gave other nations also a Hatzarat Koresh, a declaration that allowed them to rebuild their temples, bring back their statues, different things that the previous king before Koresh threw out or didn't allow. So we see that this was a very major change in Jewish life. And it's the first time, if we try and think, and we're now Erev Tisha B'Av, and we try to think, what did Jews think when they left Israel? What did they think on the way? What were they thinking of? One of the things we understand is that it's not only that their home was destroyed, it's not only that Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, but Beit HaMikdash was the center of the whole life. What we see from the prophets, Yirmiyahu and others, the problem of the time before the destruction was they believed, Heichal Hashem Hema, the temple was everything. And the temple will save us, we can do whatever. Temple, and when the temple was burnt and Am Yisrael was exiled, a major crisis within the Jewish community. And if you read, I sent you an article of Eli Assis. I sent you an English version, and he also wrote it in Hebrew. If you had time to read it in advance, it'll help you. If not, I really recommend it if you want to understand Hagai a little better. And we'll use some of the things from his article in a few minutes. We have to understand that this crisis was when the temple was burnt, but also when Hatzarat Koresh was given, it was very hard to change a diskette, where it was very hard to agree and to understand that here God is calling them, because Koresh says, Hashem pakad alai, God told me to build, Hashem pakad alai, מי בכם בכל, השם פקד עליי לבנות לו בית בירושלים. God told me to build a house in Yerushalayim. And here we find in the book of Ezra what the reactions to this Hatzarat Koresh was. We see that there was a group of people who got up, made aliyah, came, the Jews around them that didn't, they started the, JNF, Keren Kayemet, was started then, because they collected from whoever didn't come by make aliyah. Other people gave them money and supplies for the journey to Israel. And we find, and it's interesting that when I've taught this, I taught it in Israel and I taught it when we were in the States. The problem of understanding the first chapter of Ezra is a different problem. In Israel, the discussion is, maybe let's see if you can think. What is the discussion after you teach Hatzarat Koresh and you teach the reaction of the people that some of them came and the others gave money? What do you think is the problem, the question that students have with this chapter in Israel? Why didn't everyone? Okay, that's a question. It's amazing. That's a question. The kids and their different parshanim, and that's a discussion. Why didn't every Jew get up and come? When you teach it in the States, why did they go?
You just give it money.
Why did they go? And which of the options would you choose? To send the money, and you're crazy to leave and go. It's like it's a very interesting of what's the question. You have to understand what's the question that when you teach a perek. But after, okay, we learned Sefer Ezra. What happens? It looked at the beginning like a great start, and then Ezra gives us a whole long story of different problems that the people who came to Israel were facing. And then in order to get to Hagai, we have to skip about 18 years, pachot o yoter, from the declaration. Some say Hagai was at the year 520. Some claim he was 516. But when we get to the book of Hagai, he was a prophet, we learn this is a prophecy that's talking about the problems that a community had when they're already in Israel, in Jerusalem, 18 years already after Koresh gave them the opportunity to build the temple, but the temple yet wasn't built. And we ask ourselves why. And Hagai in this prophecy is trying to encourage the people to start rebuilding Beit HaMikdash, which was the purpose why they came here in the first place. And when you look at the different verses of the Perek, and we try, and if you read in advance the article, I think it'll be easier for you to try and focus on what was Hagai's main point to his audience. What is he trying to tell them? And if you can either read it here in English or in your Tanakh. And, depending what to skip. We'll skip to the heart. No, sorry. One back. Okay, my question is, what is Hagai's message to his contemporaries? There's a short movie we'll see of...
צריך כאן מישהו שיפיח בהם רוח. צריך כאן בולדוזר. מארז אחד, תריסר נביאים במארז אחד לדורות. לכל אחד מהם נבואה משלו. כל נבואה לשעתה. חגי, מה הוא אומר? כמעט 20 שנה אחרי הצהרת כורש, שבי ציון העייפים והמרוטים סיימו לבנות את בתיהם, והם יושבים בהם וחיים את חייהם כמיטב יכולתם. את כל מה שהיה להם, כל אחד השקיע בבניית הבית הפרטי שלו. כל אחד עושה לביתו. ועכשיו כולם נותרו דלים וחלשים. הם בכלל לא מסוגלים לחשוב על המשימה הלאומית שלשמה שבו לציון, בניית בית המקדש השני. תראו אותם. צריך כאן מישהו שיפיח בהם רוח. צריך כאן בולדוזר. צריך את הנביא חגי. והוא מצליח לעורר אותם לחשוב על בניין בית מקדש חדש לאלוהים. שימו לבבכם על דרכיכם, אומר להם חגי ומפיח בהם רוח. עלו ההר והבאתם עץ ובנו הבית, וארצה בו, ואכבדה. אין לאלוהים צורך במקדש מפואר, ושכל בעיות הקיום של העם תיפטרנה עם הקמתו של המקדש החדש. ואכן דבריו של הנביא חגי משפיעים, והעשייה מתחילה. מבינים? לפעמים מרוב חלומות באוויר ורצון שהכל יהיה מושלם, אנחנו מפחדים פשוט לעשות. אז מה לעשות? לעשות פשוט. ומי זה שם? זה הנביא זכריה. גם הוא נתן יד. אבל זה בסרט אחר.
Okay, I hope you understood the Hebrew. What, you understood? Right, okay. And the question is, and what they're trying to do is to summarize in a 1.5 minute movie, what is the crux of Hagai's prophecy? What is he trying to say? And this is what I want you to try and do. And I wanted you to do in 2 stages. Maybe we'll do only one. After reading part of the chapter, or whoever read it in advance, if you can send your answer, what do you think Hagai meant and wants to tell his people? What's his main message in 2 or 3 words? Send to menti.com, use the code here. And now if you read the article, and if you didn't, I really encourage you to read it. What's very interesting is whatever I'm telling you in advance, you'll have different answers here. And every answer, I think, you can, for almost every answer, you can find different emtseim sifrutim in the text. You can find repetitions of words. I'll prove that that is a main message of Hagai in this chapter. And then the next question will be, I'm already giving, trying to run it a little quickly. The next question, after you figure out what is Hagai's main answer to his contemporaries, what is his message to them? This is what I wanted you to say now in 2 or 3 words. But already think of the next question. The next question is, what of the messages of this perek do you think is relevant for your students? Think of your students in mind. After we'll hear in a second, and you know what, let us hear your answers. Just say it out loud. What do you think is the main message of Hagai to his contemporaries, to his audience?
In 1 word.
In 3 words.
Get moving.
Okay, what else?
The time is right.
Time is ripe. Okay, thank you.
Do it now.
What? Emunah?
Do it now.
Do it now. עוד דברים? Okay, then the second question is, and after here I want you to send it, we don't have time. Try and find which idea, okay, we heard here different, from each idea that we heard, we can build a different class, a different class plan. Okay, we can build a plan that's teaching emunah, we can build a plan that teaches time is now, we have to learn to use the time. We can build a whole class on the enemy of, how did you say, perfect? Perfect is the enemy of, okay, very good. Okay, and when we want to choose which idea of the ideas of Hagai is relevant for my students, and I should choose it to be the leva shiur. It might be something different than what I chose originally. Maybe originally I think Hagai's main message was A, but for my students something else is much more relevant. So what's important is to try and find a question, I call it the heart of your class, and write it as a question, as a large question. How do you know that the time, when a time is ripe for something? Okay, you can ask, 2 minutes? We can have, okay, different questions. And according to the question that you choose, that's your heart. And from there, you have to think of something, a jumping point to build your entry to the subject. In my case, the heart of my understanding of this perek is the main pasuk that's centered in the center of the chapter, is Alu Ahar va'avetem etz, where Hagai is telling the people that originally thought they would build a temple like Shlomo's temple that will be of trees of arazim, and then comes out that he tells them, go up, bring from any tree you find, but what's important is go up and build, and v'ikavda, and God will want what you're doing and will have glory from what you're doing, and do it. Don't worry about it. It's not going to be as great as. Don't think it has to be as great as. Just go jump and do. This idea, in my eyes, has a lot of important ways that it can be also relevant, bring examples that this idea was relevant in Jewish history. And I brought two, but I don't have time. I'll give one. They're both from places I've lived in. The first is from Tirat Tzvi, that's named for Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Kalisher. A lot of Jewish national philosophy is built on the prophet of Hagai and the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. And and at the beginning of the Tzionut, Rav Kalisher said, don't worry, the Geulah is not going to be something, we don't jump to the Geulah. It goes slowly, kim'ah, kim'ah. It's already written in the Gemara, but Rav Kalisher is, so what we didn't have time for. Okay, Rav Kalisher said the Geulah that we're waiting for, it's not going to be, we're not going to run to it. אך לא במנוסה נלך, ולא בחיפזון יום אחד, כי אם מעט מעט תבוא גאולת ישראל. That's one way where this idea, I think we find, is in his saying, Medinat Israel won't be built in one day, it'll take time, it won't be exactly all perfect, and that led a lot of the Tnuat Zionit. The other example is from Kfar Etzion, where I live now. And there, I don't know where it started from, I didn't have time to ask Reuven, but a lot of the history of Kfar Etzion that was started 3 times. Kfar Etzion was built and rebuilt and destroyed, and a lot of the medallia of Gush Etzion, that this is what it says on it. Alu ahar va'avetem etz uvnu abayit. Even though we wanted something that will be exactly like what we had before, God's call is for us to do something even if it's not perfect. And this idea of first finding something that's relevant in our history before we get to our personal life, because the next stage and the end of internalization is trying to think of how this can change or be important in my life or in my students' life. And this isn't our last question. We won't have time to hear, but you can go home with. And the question is, what does Hagai ask me today? If he comes into our class, and after we've learned and read this first chapter, and turns to us, and he has a question, one question he wants to ask me. What is Hagai's question to me? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, if Hagai says, go up and bring trees, go up the mountain and bring trees, try and think to yourself, what is the mountain and what are the trees in your work as a teacher or in your personal life that you can use Hagai's encouragement in order to fulfill.